Welcome to Business Minds, your resource for connecting with business owners, aspiring entrepreneurs, and forward thinkers, all of whom are interested in making the business world better, whether it's their own business or as an employee inside of a business, no matter what your role is. This is a place to come for topics of interest where you can talk them through with others, you can learn from each other, and explore those topics to come up with some distinct solutions and maybe some things or insights, I guess I should say, that you hadn't thought of before. If you've been watching during the month of June, you know that my theme for this month has been risky business. And I'm Cindy Bird. I'm your host. I'm a business owner myself. And when I looked at what topic to bring to Business Minds, I thought about the fact that there are a lot of risks associated with owning a business, just starting a business in general. And we've been addressing some of those risks through other guests that I've had on the program this month. But I thought it would be great to close out the month in a unique way by looking at one specific aspect of business where there are a number of risks potentially, and that's human resource management. So I'm so pleased to welcome as my guest today Rob Byrne, who is president of L&L Solutions. Rob, welcome to the program today.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to have you here. I'm really anxious to have you share your insights and your expertise. You help businesses, right, in the field of human resource management in a number of ways, so I know you have a lot to share with our viewers today. But before we get into that, the actual risks that we're going to discuss today, tell me more about L&L Solutions and what motivated you to start your business.
Wonderful. Actually, the concept of L&L Solutions came about probably a little over 20 years ago. I was having a conversation with my dad, those kind of standards, what do I want to do with my life?
Sure.
And he was telling me about a consultant that he was working with, what they called team building at the time.
Okay.
And I said, wow, I'd love to be able to help businesses do that. And he said, well, go get your feet wet first. So I went into human resource management from there. And then ultimately, as my career progressed, I realized that every organization can differentiate itself based upon the people that they surround themselves with.
Absolutely.
So I formed L&L Solutions on the premise that every business has a competitive advantage, and that advantage can and should be the people that they surround themselves with.
I love that perspective. I couldn't agree with you more. So often we forget, especially with all the technology and people sometimes being replaced in businesses in certain ways, that that's still the heart and soul of what makes a business successful. I absolutely agree with you there, really wholeheartedly. So what are some of the services that you provide through L&L Solutions?
L&L Solutions provides a large array of services, everything from legal compliance issues to sometimes even stepping in to help an organization with their human resource needs.
Okay.
Every organization is different where they are in their life cycle and what their needs are. It changes with ownership, it changes with market conditions. So really what we specialize in is helping understand organizations, and we meet them where they are, and we help them meet their needs where they are, and then help them grow from there.
I like that term, meet them where they are. You're not coming in and saying you've got to totally reinvent what you're doing here necessarily.
Right.
It's listen to where they're at that moment. How can you help them work through what the reality of their here and now is,
right, exactly.
And move through that and move forward and be successful.
Correct.
Okay. So who tends to be a typical client for your business?
I work with organizations of all sizes and industries.
Okay.
For the most part, however, small to medium-sized organizations, typically in a growth or a stable set, but oftentimes they do not have a dedicated HR professional on staff.
Okay.
They can't afford one, they don't have enough
Sure.
for someone to do. So L&L Solutions steps in and helps them with their, provide that kind of an expertise for them so then they can move about the rest of their business.
So important, because I know a lot of business owners are trying to do everything.
Right.
Right? They wear a lot of hats, and they might be trying to do their HR management on their own as well.
Right.
And maybe they say, oh, I've only got 2 or 3 employees. I don't need any outside expertise. I can handle this. Well, I think that's where you come in to tell us about what are some of those risks, though, potentially that a business owner, especially a small business, is dealing with if they ignore attention to human resource management. I know you've prepared some things to talk about today, so let's get started
Okay.
on what those are.
Wonderful. One of the first risks are things that a lot of business owners are aware, or it's kind of on the periphery, and that's the typical legal side of human resources.
Okay.
It's the employment laws that we have to deal with, the government agencies and the government entities. They often know that they're there, but maybe not quite how things impact them. So, for example, are we hiring people properly?
Sure.
Immigration type issues with the Form I-9. It's the most commonly misfilled out document in the field of human resources.
Really?
Yeah, but it can have up to a $10,000 penalty per page.
Well, if that isn't motivation to comply, I don't know what is. But if you don't know,
Right.
and ignorance is not an excuse, right?
Unfortunately for the government, they do not take that excuse. No, no. So that's one example. You may have remembered a year and a half or so ago, there was a big push to revamp the Fair Labor Standards Act.
Yes.
Oftentimes, what I find with especially smaller organizations is they'll bring somebody in to help out with production or some things, and they'll say, you know what, I'm just going to pay you a weekly salary and treat them as an exempt employee when they probably should be non-exempt.
Okay.
So oftentimes, it's easier administratively for the small business owner, but it's not the person that determines exempt or non-exempt status, for example. So that.
So they're in non-compliance
right,
then by doing that.
Right. I mean, they could ultimately owe overtime for somebody for the back 2 or 3 years.
Wow.
So it's another one of those, they don't realize some of the legal side risks that are out there.
Okay. So beyond that, beyond coming to someone like you, I mean, can I just Google this? I'm a small business owner. Can I just look up compliance online? Does that work?
I'll say yes and no. You can find a lot of things on Google, but where working with somebody really comes into play is the practical application.
Good point.
I'm not aware of a law that Congress has passed that we haven't had to try and figure out and muddle through. The American with Disabilities Act, the Family and Medical Leave Act, they're all well-intentioned laws that are out there, but Congress doesn't tell us what to do with them or the practical application. So working with somebody with 20 or 25 years experience can come in and help you manage through those technical sides of things without having to say, well, what does all of this legal stuff mean?
And you keep up to date, obviously, in this field, right?
Absolutely.
You have some special certifications that are HR related, correct?
I do. I am certified through the Human Resource Certification Institute as a senior professional in human resources, as well as the Society for Human Resource Management. I'm a senior professional through them as well. In addition to that, I'm on the board of directors of the State of Illinois subchapter of the Society for Human Resource Management, and I am their legislative director for the state.
So you do have your finger on the pulse of what's the latest in regards to legal compliance. Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, that makes me confident. If I ever hire any employees, I'm going to talk to this guy right here as far as that's concerned. But what else tends to be a potential risk?
Legal compliance is one piece, and as I mentioned before, it's often on the periphery. But there's a lot of potential risk that oftentimes business owners and managers don't even realize. So, for example, not training your supervisors how to be a supervisor. Okay. So, so often we find somebody who's a great salesperson or great at production. We say, you know what? I want you to go out and lead these people now. And then they get in that position and they kind of trip and they stumble a little bit. And we say, well, maybe that wasn't the right fit for you. You've been with me for a while, so why don't you take this other higher job? And as the business grows, somebody tends to get promoted, even though they've never really been trained on how to be a leader. Peter Drucker actually coined this as the Peter Principle.
Yeah, I remember reading about that.
So
promoting people to their highest level of incompetence is what he called it, right?
That's exactly it. And we find that a lot. And a lot of what I do is also leadership development and supervisory training, where we give people the basic soft skill tools so they can be more effective with their team.
Well, everybody wants to be more competent and confident in their ability, right?
Absolutely.
Or maybe you aspire to be a manager or a supervisor or a leader in an organization. So having training opportunities, development opportunities is really key. So what's the risk for the business if they don't do this, if they don't put some attention and effort into making sure that supervisors actually know how to be supervisors? What are some of the risks that they take if they don't do that?
One of the biggest ones has actually been in the news quite a bit is workplace and sexual harassment.
Yes.
If you don't train them, the proper do's and don'ts, there's a lot of potential liability out there from that business owner's perspective. So that's kind of that's one aspect of it.
Okay.
But the other aspect that people don't often take a look at is what's an ineffective or average to mediocre performing supervisor. What's the opportunity cost to my business?
Oh, okay.
Where could they be? Where could they be leading my team? We do a lot of work with employee engagement, and there's a big difference between employee satisfaction and employee engagement.
Yes.
Employee satisfaction is really that I'm going to come into work, I'm not going to yell, I'm at a whole bunch of people, I'm okay with my paycheck, kind of a,
Sure.
I'm there.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And most people know that line to stay out of HR's office. Okay, or to not have to have that difficult conversation with their boss.
Sure.
If somebody gives discretionary effort above and beyond that, that's engagement. They don't have to provide the effort, but they choose to. So
I love that. They choose to.
Right.
So it's incumbent upon the business owners, the leaders of the organization, to set up the conditions for employees to want to choose to put forth that discretionary effort, is what I'm hearing you say.
absolutely.
And that's a complex issue, right?
It is.
The whole concept of employee engagement and motivation. So just presuming what you know about that as a manager in an organization is dangerous, is risky, and not understanding your own personal tendencies.
Absolutely.
Would you say that's a key component?
Absolutely. A lot of supervisor skills, if you will, those soft skills, are what we call the soft skills, but they're it's also introspective. It's understanding yourself.
Yes.
Most or a lot of managers and owners don't realize the impact that they have on the business.
And it's huge.
Or
Right.
engagement, absolutely. With the topic of engagement, studies after studies have shown that the top two reasons why somebody provides discretionary effort, the first one is the relationship they have with their supervisor.
Yeah, and it's the reason people leave too, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's the number one.
The number one, yeah, people, the old saying is people don't quit the company, their employer, they quit their direct supervisor because that's such a key relationship. So I can see, and you're speaking again, as I say to some of my guests, to the choir here, that's something that I believe in very, very strongly, that developing people to be confident in their ability to be leaders and managers, giving them the training, the tools, the knowledge that they need is so very important. Because the risk you have obviously is turnover,
Absolutely.
right? And
or lost customers,
or lost
customer service
customers.
issues.
Yeah, customer service issues because you've got disgruntled employees dealing with those customers instead of happy, engaged, productive employees instead. It might be your leaders and your managers who are disengaged.
We see
Right?
that quite a bit because they feel like they've got those handcuffs on
Yes.
proverbially. I can't go anywhere else and earn what I'm making, so I'm kind of stuck. And unfortunately, you've got presenteeism there, so where somebody's at work, but they're mentally disengaged or checked out.
Oh, that's an interesting term. Presenteeism. I'm present,
I showed up.
but that's just, I'm not really engaged.
Right.
I'm just here.
Just kind of there, hitting that minimum expectation.
Uh-huh.
So I keep my job. Yeah.
Yeah, I know people like that, unfortunately.
Yeah, me too.
And it really makes me sad because it doesn't have to be that way. And I see a lot of businesses who either don't realize that that's the conditions that they're causing, or they choose to ignore it.
Absolutely.
So I think that's one of the things that you've got in your next point, right? That ignoring something and the risk. Because sometimes, and a lot of the work that I'm doing with businesses lately has to do with the topic of civility.
Okay.
That there's a lot of uncivility or incivility, uncivil behavior that leaders and managers, supervisors, coworkers might not even realize that they're doing it. But the incivilities in the eyes of the receiver, as they say, they're perceiving it that way. And so, if you have leaders and managers who are behaving inappropriately, and also employees in general who are behaving employee, what's the risk associated with that, Rob?
A lot of risk. Actually, it's very easy to kind of turn a blind eye to some things that you say, you know what, that really doesn't fit my culture, but I really don't want to go through the hassle of terminating somebody and then having to rehire and all of those things that are associated with turnover.
I have clients like that who are they're content to say, no, I'm just going to leave it like it is. Oh, well.
So, unfortunately, we see that quite a bit.
We do.
But there are a couple of different risks associated with that, and I've got a couple of examples.
Oh, great.
One was there was an organization that I was working with who had a fantastic salesperson. Was actually responsible for bringing in close to 50% of the revenue.
Wow.
So very, very valuable person, understood the business. Unfortunately, the manager engaged in some inappropriate behavior and was terminated for cause. Sales dipped. And the manager got nervous. The business owner got nervous, so he rehired.
Oh, wow.
The salesperson, who then went again immediately to engage in the same behaviors that originally got him terminated.
Oh my gosh.
Unfortunately, that one went to court, and courts and juries are very unsympathetic, especially when you're aware of past behavior. So that one cost the business owner quite a bit of money, and actually he ended up closing that business.
Oh my gosh.
Just because of the financial penalty of that lawsuit.
That's
So it was very, very sad to see that. But oftentimes we'll look away because we're all focused on the bottom right-hand number of the P&L, right? So as a business owner, I am as well. But we need to focus on how we get there, not just what we're doing.
I love that you're saying that, Rob. It's looking at the better way to improve your profits.
Right, absolutely, absolutely.
Not settling for someone who's great at sales and obviously bringing in a lot of your sales, but ignoring the fact that if you also taught this person how to correct their behavior and taught them about the risks, the downsides associated with that, and you held them accountable
Absolutely.
for changing that behavior, your profit, who knows where that business might have been
Right, absolutely.
if they had done that instead. Wow, that's pretty powerful. So don't ignore.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Don't ignore that bad behavior, especially. I agree with you that, the hot topic, the Me Too movement, all of that
Absolutely.
has certainly brought all of that to the forefront. It's amazing to me how many people still think that it's okay, though, even with all of that being brought to attention, that there's still a lot of acceptance or just pushing it under the rug. Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of the Me Too movement, those are very severe type of situations that we're hearing about.
Yes.
I don't think a lot of leaders and managers realize that there's subtleties and subtle ways that I can potentially offend somebody at work.
Yes.
Or engage in those non-productive behaviors, and I don't realize the impact that I'm having on somebody.
So that goes back to your other point about training leaders
Absolutely.
and managers, is to help them understand what are those subtleties and to recognize their personal tendencies that might fall into those categories that they
Absolutely.
hadn't really thought of before.
Yeah.
Open their eyes. I love it. Love it.
Absolutely.
Oh, so much to think about. So I know there are a lot of risks out there associated with human resource management.
Yep.
I know you've brought another key one to us this morning, though, Rob. What is that?
This is a conversation that I have with a lot of business owners and leaders, and they don't realize the impact that they have on their business as a leader. They say, you know what, I own the business, I'm the manager, people are going to follow me no matter what happens, but they don't realize that they're constantly being evaluated by not just their employees, but also their customers. And,
Great point.
and good quality employees have a choice of who to work with nowadays.
Yes.
So, it's a buyer's market on the employee side just because those technical skills are very difficult to come by.
Mm-hmm.
So, if there's a better organization with a better culture that they fit better, your good people are going to be leaving you with the average to mediocre folks who can't find that that next good opportunity.
That's a great point. Businesses sometimes fail to realize that they don't just have a brand that they are tailoring and marketing to their customers. They have an internal brand that they
Absolutely.
use to attract and retain employees, good employees, quality employees, right?
Absolutely.
And realizing that those leaders and managers, the owners, whoever's present and active in the business, they're setting the tone, right?
Absolutely.
And you've done a great job of calling it culture management, right? Is that's a service that you provide through
Yep.
your business. So what do you mean by culture management, and how does that help to minimize these risks that you're mentioning?
Every organization has a culture, whether they realize it or not. 20, 25 years ago, it was something that only the owners or board or executive team was
Sure.
thought about, and they often thought that it was something that couldn't be changed. But now we realize that it's a living, moving piece of the business, and that we can change it on a dime if we need to.
Love that perspective.
But the way that we do that is understanding the leader's influence in this. Okay,
Yes.
so most organizations have a culture, vision, values, and all of that. They look great up on the wall, but it's often window dressing, right?
Yes, yeah, with values on the wall, not in the halls, they say, right?
Perfect. I love that. I love that. So I take that a step further.
Okay.
And I say, you know what? These values are wonderful, but what are they?
Yes.
Supporting your values are competencies, which are nothing more than a collection of behaviors we want to see at work, be it technical or soft skill. So your culture is ultimately defined by the behaviors demonstrated at work. So if we can boil it down to that,
Yes.
and behaviors are nothing more than what a manager or anybody in the business says, does, or allows to happen.
I love that last one.
So
Allows to happen.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So if we focus there, so what I say to my staff or what I say to my customers is one thing. What do I do? Am I following up on my promises or commitments? Those are pretty easy, okay? Now, the allows to happen, we often take in a negative connotation, okay? Do I allow the salesperson to engage in the behavior? Do I allow somebody with a specialized skill set that nobody else has bully people? That's allowing it to happen because you're telling them
Yes.
it's okay.
Yeah.
And all your employees around that are going to witness that.
In a sense, you're rewarding
Absolutely.
that type of behavior by choosing to allow it.
Yep.
And what we reward tends to get repeated, right?
Absolutely. On the flip side of that, managers create the environment where people can be successful. You alluded to this a little bit earlier. So by allowing, let's say, someone to make a mistake and not beat them up over it, but yet let them make a mistake and learn from it, creates that environment.
Yes.
Okay. I can't motivate somebody.
Right.
I create the
Right.
environment
Agree.
where it's possible.
Agree.
And what a leader or manager says, does, or allows to happen creates that environment where it's possible. And that's the impact. And the risk to the business is not creating that environment and getting a handful of employees just at that line. If you create the environment here and understand the impact of the leader, you get a lot more discretionary effort. And
Absolutely.
as a business owner, imagine if every one of your team gave you 20% more every week. What would that do to your bottom line?
Yeah, that'd be tremendous.
And absolutely. So that's the impact that a leader has, and they often don't realize it. So through training or executive coaching or a lot of other things that we can do, we help people gain that introspection to understand their influence.
You're absolutely right. That taking the proverbial hard look in the mirror and really understanding that you have certain tendencies and those are manifested in your behavior, your decisions, your actions, what you choose to allow to happen. And you did a great job of explaining both the downside and the upside to that particular element. But getting the leader, the business owner, to really want to do that. Because typically they don't see themselves as part of the issue if there are challenges going on, or
Mhm.
that they don't really understand the significance of the influence that they have. So I love that you mentioned executive coaching because it often does take that one-on-one. I know some of the techniques I've had success with, and I bet you've used this too, is to encourage people to try something different than
Mhm.
what they normally are doing and see what kind of outcomes they get
Mhm.
and reflect about that and reflect about what did they do differently that led to the different outcome. And sometimes people have to see it to believe it.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Um,
It's hard to get your head around some of these things. They're intangibles, right? To an extent. I mean, you can
to an
translate it
extent.
to the bottom line, and I
Mhm.
think that's the key that we're trying to convey here is these all have a bottom line
Mhm.
impact, all of these risks.
Absolutely.
And culture is huge.
Mhm.
So the leader
Absolutely.
has a role understanding their influence. I think you've got one more that you're going to share with us today. Is that
Um,
right? Or a couple more
uh,
risks? We've got time for one more, I think, to talk about.
One of the biggest risks that I find is just not asking for help.
Ah, okay.
It's for some reason people think, I've got that. I understand all of that. I'm a business owner myself, and most business owners, small to medium, they'll get help. They have an attorney on staff,
Okay.
or on retainer,
Sure.
or somebody they call. They've got somebody doing their payroll. They've got somebody doing their taxes. They've got an accountant. They've got somebody helping out with marketing. But the one piece of the business that can dictate their success or lack thereof is people
Mm-hmm.
and,
Agreed.
and who they put around them. So for some reason, they think that they can manage that piece of it, even though that's not their expertise.
Yes,
So not asking for help is just a tremendous risk.
absolutely. And I can definitely hear that. Um, so how can people reach out to you, Rob? How can they contact you? How can they find out more about L&L Solutions?
Okay.
Someone who can help with those things.
Absolutely. You could visit our website at www.landlsolutions.net, and the "and" is spelled out on that.
Okay.
For some reason, web doesn't like the "and" symbol, so
Okay.
um, they can contact me directly, 309-256-2714,
Okay.
or at rob@lnlsolutions.net.
Okay. Thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thank
You've
you
been
for
a
having
pleasure
me.
to have you. I've learned a lot along the way from all of my guests this month, and it's been great to have you talk about those risks associated with human resource management. It is hard to believe we're at the end of June, and when I see you next week, it will be we'll be into a new month, July, of course. And this program airs the day before Independence Day, July the 4th, when we celebrate all of the great freedoms that we enjoy in this country, the freedom to start your own business and all of that. We know as business owners, we know how much we value that freedom and autonomy. So that's really going to be the topic that I focus on next
Mhm.
week is freedom and autonomy. We know it's associated with being a business owner, but what role does it play for your employees? And how can you create a culture where you're encouraging entrepreneurs, people who will have that higher level of engagement that Rob was talking about today? So you can look forward to that. I still have guest spots open for the remaining dates in July. If you're interested in being a guest on Business Minds, please email me at businessminds@email.com. And that's also where you can submit your ideas for topics for upcoming programs. This is your program. I want it to be for you, the viewers. So let me know what business topics you're interested in being featured on the show in the future. We're on Facebook. Please like, comment, and follow us. And I will appreciate that very much. And I will see you next week. Have a great week. Thank you.